Welcome to Business Mentorship, Keepin' It Real, where we feature entrepreneurs and enterprise leaders who share their great ideas in our guest blog, found on shareyourstories.online. Suzanne Sommers is a returning guest with her new book on the magic of walking, your guide to a balanced and purposeful life. She is a speaker, fitness, and self-care expert. And we're going to discuss not only her new book, but the importance of following your instincts when starting something new. And Susan joins us from Toronto, Ontario. Welcome.
Thank you.
You know, it's such a thrill, Susan, because I've been watching your posts on social media and I've been seeing how you've kind of been making this transition from PR into fitness. And I also know that you did the virtual El Camino. So why don't you start by sharing that experience? Because I think that was kind of the foundation for you moving into and launching this new book.
It absolutely was. I had done 35 races before, and then COVID hit, and I couldn't do my in-person races. So I was looking for something online. I found the Conqueror website, which is this wonderful app and website started by two men, I think in South Africa, and it's all these different virtual races. So El Camino was something I'd always wanted to do in person. And so I grabbed the opportunity, but it's 778 kilometers. So I started in June of 2020, and every day I did 15,000 steps. I haven't, by the way, done that consistently since then, but 15,000 steps, 4 months, finished the race in November of 2020 and started to write a new book on walking. And that's the one that you're talking about, physical, mental, and spiritual walking, because I'd never really appreciated what it meant to be a walker and the mental and spiritual sides of it.
You know, what's really interesting is that I know that lots of folks have been sort of reinventing and looking for easy ways to get into fitness. And you and I both know that walking is one of the easiest things that you can do. You know, it's something we can do in the neighborhood. We can do it with friends or alone. So give us a little bit of background into the spiritual connection, because that's really very cool. I think that, you know, I know for myself, when I walk every morning, I call it my inspirational time, because that's when I get the great ideas that kind of come into my brain about what to do for my own business. So how's the spiritual connection work for you?
Well, I have a ravine behind me where I live, and I really hadn't gone in there much or really looked around. So when I was there, I started taking pictures, and because I had the Facebook groups that I was in, I started posting them, and suddenly people said, "I love your pictures." And that's when I realized that you don't give yourself credit. I saw myself as a writer, and suddenly I realized that I was also a photographer. And in my new book are pictures that I had taken. So it was really a big transition for me to say, I am more visual than I think, and to give myself credit. So now when I travel, I make sure that I always take pictures and post them. So I'm not doing much traveling during COVID, right?
No, that's for sure. But you know, that's a really interesting point. And maybe we can explore that a little bit further. You know, sometimes we don't realize that we actually have talents in other areas until somebody else points it out. So how did you become more interested in the photography aspect of it and marrying that with your book?
I have always been interested in flowers and color. I guess color, it was the thing that always drove me. So when I went into the ravine, I saw the color. I would go up close and take a picture of the flowers, and then I'd start to post them. And so then I started realizing that with the color and the flowers and the trees and the benches, that I had something very new.
You know, what's really interesting is that I think that we forget to really take in the environment around us, right? And to your point, it was very organic how this whole journey started. So now that you've published the book, we all know how long it takes to make a commitment to write a book. So the book's published, it's out there, it's available for everybody to buy. How are you now making connections with your customer?
So that's been interesting, because during COVID, I did it online. You know, I would organize some workshops, I would do some keynotes, but I really wasn't interacting. So as soon as I had the chance to get out there, and so this is very exciting. I just started to do a 4-week course at the Runnymede Library in person. And so they gathered 20 people. I did it yesterday for the first time. And we did an hour with the book, and then we walked in Hyde Park. So when you give yourself the chance to go beyond the way you see it, I was so busy going out there trying to get into bookstores that now I realize that this is really what I want to do. get the interaction with the reader.
How do you build your confidence? Because I'm sure there's lots of folks in our, viewing and listening audience that are saying, okay, this sounds like a big shift for Susan. I mean, this is something really different. So how do you build your confidence as an entrepreneur to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to start something new and I'm going to believe in myself and I'm going to make it work? Is there anything that you can share with our audience?
I think it was really organic. What happened was I started talking to people who had the book. And they'd say, I love the book. And I'd say, well, what do you love about the book? And they say, well, I don't know. There's websites, there's spirituality, etc. And so it really started that way, where I really wanted to know more about how people were reading books. So I was driven by me wanting to understand my readers more than I love your book.
Right.
And sometimes it just takes something like that to say, okay, now I'm ready.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes.
Now, who would you say would be your ideal target market? Because I mean, we all know that people of all ages can walk. So who do you feel is the people that are going to resonate most with you?
Well, I would say probably 50 or 55 plus, because I got into my first race as 59. And I know that's when often people think maybe they've gone through menopause and they're thinking, I want to try something new, or I need some more confidence. So that's when I did my first 5K race. But having said that, I have a granddaughter who's gone into races with me. She's now 17. And I do actually also see it as a family thing. So again, it would take someone saying to me, could you do something for young mothers, Right. And I think that's what's going to happen from now on, is it's going to be driven, the actual in-person, courses will be driven by the markets that want it. But I do see it as more for women, even though the book is for men and women.
Sure.
Because it's my story, right? So
for sure. So for those would-be authors that are listening to us today, Susan, and I know you've written, this is not your first book. So, yeah, exactly. I know that you've got quite a few. So, right. What advice can you give to someone who's sitting at home and they're thinking, wow, 7 books, really? So how do you do that? How do you write? How do you make that magic happen?
That's an interesting question, because I think I would just sit down. I wouldn't say that every day from 3 to 4 I wrote, but I tried to write every day. Okay. And I tried to also take things from outside, things that happened to me, my experiences, and then figure out how to incorporate them into the writing. And then I found a fantastic publisher. And I think having the editor and the publisher in place
on board
really helps you to figure out, okay, now I need to do the book.
Right. Right. So, that kind of drives the momentum, doesn't it? Because, they'll send you email messages or pick up the phone and go, so Susan, how's the writing going? And, you may be in a little bit of a lull and go, well, it's not going very well, but thanks for calling, because now I can think of, something that I'd like to write. So tell us, do you write with the old-fashioned pen and paper or pencil and paper, or do you jump on the computer?
I write on the computer, but it's very funny. I am the queen of the printer. Like, I need to actually, and this is, I keep having my printer breaking down because I keep doing something, whatever, right? And then I have to figure it out. But I need to see it in front of me, but I like to see it on the computer first, and then to have it in front of me to edit.
That's interesting. Yeah, so that's a 2-part process then. Yes, so it's almost exactly. Like you throw the words onto the computer, and then you have to print it, and you have the physical copy in your hand that you can edit, and then you go back to the computer version and do those edits.
Then I get a cup of coffee and go into another room and sit down with the printed copy and look at it. So that's my process.
Isn't that great? Well, that's really great advice, because I think that sometimes just getting over the hurdle of where to write is a part of the process, right? Because everything we do in life has a process if we really think about it, right?
Exactly.
Now, you said that you've shared some photographs in your book. And so how do the photographs in the book marry with the content on the walking?
Well, they do, because the photographs reflect all the different places I've been. So in the spirituality part, because I've traveled a lot, and I've taken pictures as I've traveled, I said, okay, this is spirituality. What photos do I have? But the interesting thing is, I didn't realize I could put photos in my book until I spoke to the publisher, this woman who was the publisher, who said to me, of course you can. So you make assumptions about a book, that it's just going to be print, it's going to be too expensive. They're all black and white, but they're good, clear photos. So sometimes having someone say to you, of course you can, and it's not going to cost a lot more, that inspired me to look through and see all the photos I've taken.
Isn't that really interesting. That now, how did you make the connection with the publisher? So was it a personal introduction? Did you, go on good old Google and Google names of publishers? How did you make that connection with the
She was
publisher?
from the YMCA when I used to work out at the YMCA. And then I was just looking around and I remembered that she was a publisher and she was still in business. She's in Toronto. I wanted someone local.
Right.
I wanted someone who could do everything from the edited manuscript right through to actually getting the printer,
Right.
Getting them actually the books made, right? So
Right.
yeah, so that's what I was looking for, and I loved it. She's been in business for years. She had the person who was doing the photos and the layout right there. So it was like together they were doing it, and she was very accessible, and it was just a pleasure to work with somebody. I've worked with Oxford University Press, and then I've worked with her, right?
Right. So you've got a good comparison now, right?
Exactly.
Because the personal connection really, I think, is important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Now,
she can give me lots of ideas, right?
well, that's the other thing I was just going to say, because, I think we have, to your point, we get in our thoughts, this is how I want it to look. This is the structure. This is the visual image I have in my mind that, the printed version is going to look like. And then you collaborate with somebody who has some really great ideas, and it kind of organically changes into something that's even more wonderful.
Well, it's interesting. The cover, I had two covers to pick from. One was a photo I took, and one was a stock photo.
And I'm sure you went with the photo you took.
Actually,
really?
And it's beautiful. It's like, it just takes you right in. When you look at the picture, it makes you want to go in. I like the colors in the stock photo. And it cost me next to nothing because it was a stock photo,
Right.
So again, she was the one who said to me, look at this. And so that helped me to make that decision.
Okay, so now we've got the book published. You're having an opportunity to connect with the customers, and now we have that daunting task of being able to sell the book. So what's the marketing plan look like? Did your publisher work with you on the marketing plan to sell the book?
Not really. I mean, because I have a marketing background, it was the website. It was the doing all the online things that I possibly could. Right. And it's interesting. I joined all these women's networking groups because I thought, I really want to travel and I'll get it out in all kinds of directions. And I found that I was getting very just all over the place, right? Like, am I really going to go to that country? And am I really going to go there? So I pulled back and said, okay, so what do I need to do? Especially when COVID ended. And I started going to the bookstores in Toronto to try to get it in the bookstores. And then, as I said, I realized that I wanted to do more than have my book in a bookstore. And so I started doing the course.
The workshops.
So it's nothing like what I would have done probably for my clients. Right. But it was organic, because we went from being in COVID and me being online to me being out there. And so I just made that adjustment and realized that's what I wanted to do.
That was the right
And
path.
I'm in sometimes fairs and things like that, events. I look for events in Toronto, but my big dream is to talk on cruise ships, which I've done once. So
I was just going to ask you about that because
I don't care where. Just
I know I saw in your bio that you had been on, one of the celebrity cruises.
12 cruises, right?
Isn't that something?
So that's my dream because I know there are women there, and that's a perfect market for me. Yeah.
And what a wonderful way to have a business that allows you to adapt your lifestyle to your passion.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think that we always do at the end of our guest blogs is we ask folks to share 3 words of advice. And so I'd like you to summarize your experience with us today by explaining your 3 words, which are embrace passion, purpose, and resilience.
So actually, those 3 words relate to my races probably more than anything. So passion is when I started doing them, I wasn't passionate. I did 5Ks, went home and had a glass of wine, fell asleep, that kind of thing. But as I did them, I realized that crossing that finish line with a group of people, some of whom had never done it before, became my passion, and telling people, and I've gone in with women and said, it's an hour. Can you walk for an hour? Then you should be going to a race. So that's been my passion, is to give people women that confidence to enter a race, right? Mm-hmm. The purpose is, again, I need something like El Camino. I need something, a finish line. So I use my Fitbit, which I absolutely love, and that tracks my steps. So whether I'm doing it online or in person, my purpose is to have a goal to cross the finish line, right? And I love the Women's College Hospital has got this wonderful run for women. It's absolutely fantastic in July. And so now it's back to in person. So that has become my purpose. And my resilience is 2 7.5-hour marathons. At the end, I said, well, I finished uninjured. And so that's resilience, So once I'd done them, I realized I'll never do them again. And that's okay.
Yeah. So, Susan, to close out our conversation today, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but I know that you're a very open and honest person. And I know that the folks who are watching the video are going to say, okay, I really want to know, give me an idea of how old this wonderful entrepreneur is, because, I think we sometimes think we have to put ourselves on the shelf when we get to a certain age. So may I be so bold as to ask for you to share with our audience? You can give us a range, how old are you?
Well, I'm 77.
Woo!
I'm 77. And so one of the reasons I want to say that is because I think I want to also change the image.
Right.
The preconceived image of women not being able to be out there, not being able to do things. I mean, I think the media does us a big disservice with the images of older women. So if I can counter that by me being out there, doing keynotes, doing courses, then that's what I want to do. So that's it.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Susan. And as I say, I hope I didn't put you on the spot.
No. Thank you for asking.
You're pretty an open and honest gal. So I really thank you for that. And I really want to thank you for spending some time with us to sort of give us the story behind the story for this new book. And I'm going to put out the challenge that once you've had an opportunity to speak on some of those cruise ships, that you're going to come back and share that experience with our viewing and listening. Great. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. To you, our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us in this edition of Keeping It Real, where we introduce you to the person behind the logo. I'm Trish Tonine, founder and host for the series. And if you're interested in sharing your business story, visit our website at shareyourstories.online. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we share another great idea.
Thank you.